Hello, everybody, and welcome to the astrological weather report for the December lunar cycle, which begins tomorrow, December 4th, and will extend through January 1st of next year. My name is Daniel Fiverson. So I've been asking this question. Does the Earth seem to be spinning faster on its axis? Can you feel the planetary wobble? What the heck is going on? So I want to kind of look at two sides to this story. We clearly know that we're coming through some very difficult times. We thought 2019 was going to be hard, and then 2020 came along, and 2021 followed it, and we're right on the threshold of coming into another year. And I'm going to look a little bit later on. I'm going to look at what we can expect, what's on the road ahead. But I just want to kind of briefly touch on, this space that we've passed through just in these last 2 weeks. Flash mobs in California are just looting, going into luxury stores and just looting the stores. I mean, it's like there's absolutely seems to be no boundaries in terms of what people are willing to do. China and Russia have developed hypersonic nuclear missiles that can fly around the world, at these supersonic speeds and evade all detection. The Omicron variant, COVID variant has emerged, even as the United States is, reopens its borders and everybody's back in restaurants and doing all in public places and maybe wearing masks, maybe not wearing masks, as if everything was, back to normal again. 5 people were killed and over 40 injured by a hit and run driver who drove through a Christmas parade in Wisconsin as a result of Kyle Rittenhouse being found not guilty. These are certainly some crazy times that we're passing through, and this is just evidence of just in the last 2 weeks what this eclipse has brought to our doorstep. But there's some good news. It's not all bad. I went to goodnewsnetworks.org. These images and all this news is directly from them. I think it's a good place to go just to kind of catch up, to find a balance in the world, to see that there's still some good things going on. For instance, the jaguars in Mexico are growing in number, okay? And the government saved some rare old growth trees in a British Columbia forest, 10,000 square miles of it, banned it from further logging. And a defense system against giant asteroids in the future is being planned by NASA and SpaceX, launching their first rocket to test this defense system. Up in Canada, again, Toronto is replacing air conditioners with deep lake water to cool hundreds of buildings. And off the Seattle coast, 25 years ago, there were 0 humpback whales, and now there are 500 of them with a record number of calves. And over in England, across the big pond, the River Thames has rebounded with seahorses and seals. So there is good news in the world. It's not all bad. We have to find it, but we have to recognize that we're in a liminal space. We're passing through, this time when the present is just overloaded with the past, and what is our future, and how do we generate the future that we would really like to bring into our reality. So I want to review what's happening for the next 4 weeks. And clearly, I think everybody already knows that this new moon tomorrow ushers in a total solar eclipse at 12 degrees, 22 minutes of Sagittarius. And it occurs at 2:42:50 a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to go through the astronomy first, because I think the astronomy is important. The astronomy definitely informs our astrology. It's not just the astrology, but we have to really understand the physical relationship of the planets themselves. This eclipse belongs to Saros cycle 152, and these Saros cycles are 18-year cycles in which the eclipses occur. And do a little research. They actually trace how the path of the eclipses moves across the planet from between the two poles. So we're in the midst of this, and this eclipse cycle 152, the last one occurred in 2003. And interestingly enough, in that year, Mark Zuckerberg created the first iteration of Facebook. It was only for Harvard University, but Facebook really came on the planet as a platform when this eclipse occurred. Currently, Facebook is undergoing radical changes again. And the Hubble Space Telescope began to capture deep space imagery of our galaxy. And right now we're paused, for the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope. It's been delayed. The launch is delayed. It was actually supposed to have gone off already, but it's delayed until December 22nd. And it's 100 times more powerful than Hubble. We are going to have a perspective of the universe that is astounding, that we have not occurred, we've never had this experience. And clearly, I suggest that this could also correlate to an expansion in human consciousness as our awareness of the world around us increases. And that's clearly a Sagittarian theme, which I'm going to touch on because this eclipse is in Sagittarius. So we're going to talk about that as well. The eclipse will be total in Antarctica, and it will be visible in South Africa and the Southern Atlantic Ocean. And I guess those people who are down doing research in Antarctica will see it as well, be visible for them. So let's look at the astrology. This charts that I'm going to show you, I like to isolate the planet itself that is that we're talking about to see the influences on it. If we look at all the aspects that are going on in any given chart, it can be too much information and it's hard to sort it out. But when a cycle begins for a certain planet, a certain group of planets, or a lunation, such as a solar eclipse or even a new moon, it's about the sun and the moon, and the aspects to that sun and moon at that moment of their perfection, when the two of them come together or they oppose each other, really carries an imprint that persists through the entire cycle that began at that moment. So, a solar eclipse in general is an amplified new moon, and they're pressure valves. They release pressures within us that had found no other outlet. Lunar eclipses are emotional releases. Solar eclipses are eclipses of ourself in some way, our self-actualization process. And both of those concepts really refer to the dynamics of the sun and the moon. The moon being our emotional body, and the sun being, how we self-actualize, who we are and who we're becoming. So this solar eclipse really speaks to who we are and who we're becoming to a great degree. It's interesting to note that eclipses carry the imprint of the sign in which the first eclipse of that Saros cycle occurred. And cycle 152 began in 1805 in the sign of Leo. And this current solar eclipse is also in a fire sign. It's in Sagittarius. So there's a direct correlation here that really carries forward. Eclipses are breakdown or breakthrough events. Stuff happens at eclipses, obviously. We all know that. This is kind of old news. But the events can be something that literally collapses, right in front of us, or some great new potential opens for some other great event to occur. And even the breakdowns can be breakthrough events because, there's a law of physics. The two things can't exist in the same place at the same time. Something has to go away for something else new to take its place. In fire signs, lunations correlate to how we are self-actualizing. As I said, who we have become and who we are becoming. It's an ongoing process. Every day of our lives is a snapshot, but it's really part of a movie. Just like when we look at a chart, the chart is a snapshot of that moment, but it's just a single point in a much longer cycle because it carries within it what came before, what's present now, and what it holds for the future as well. An eclipse liberates whatever's bottled up inside of us. It just releases it. Like I said, it's a pressure valve. It just opens that valve like a steam valve and lets that pressure out in some way. It can come out proactively or can come out reactively. And a lot of that depends on how we approach it and how we approach our lives in general. It's important to note that at an eclipse, the lunar nodes station retrograde. A lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, same thing. They're stationed. And this condition adds density and intensity as the nodes stand still and drill down on a single point in the zodiac for an extended period of time. It's one of the reasons that they're so powerful, because the energy is just standing still, if you would. It's like taking a magnifying glass and holding it up to the sun and focusing on a leaf or something, and that the focused sunlight through that magnifying glass will set that leaf on fire. The stationary nodes do the same thing to us. And we also have to remember that all of these things that we are looking at above us in the sky, they're not happening in the sky. They're happening right here. They're happening on the earth. They're happening in our bodies, in our conscious energetic framework. So it's as above, so below, but it's really about what's below. As much, if not more than what's above. We look above to understand what's happening, but it's not happening up there. It's happening down here. So this is the actual astrology of the eclipse itself. And I'll just kind of read through it. Excuse me, just take a drink. So the sun and the moon, the luminaries, are separating from a new phase conjunction to asteroid Vesta. New phase conjunction is a conjunction that's just beginning. It's separating from its perfection. It's applying to a balsamic conjunction to Mercury. So a balsamic conjunction is closing the cycle. It's not quite at the perfection point yet, but it's kind of like the dark of the moon, a crescent moon, which holds the necessity for, in order to cross that threshold, we have to resolve all of the dynamics that are still hanging fire. Anything that's unresolved from that previous cycle must be resolved before the cycle can close and move from the balsamic phase to the new phase conjunction. The luminaries are separating from a partile inconjunct, partile meaning exact, inconjunct to Uranus and Taurus, which is quite powerful. And this is probably the most significant aspect in this solar eclipse is this exact inconjunct to Uranus. An inconjunct, this inconjunct is gibbous, and it is a gibbous inconjunct holds the energy of a Virgo dynamic. It's growth through crisis. And clearly we are growing through crisis. That's how we grow. Until we have a direct emotional experience of something, we don't get it. People can tell us, do this, do that. Even our minds can tell us, this is what you need to be doing, what you should be doing. But until we have an emotional event that pertains to it, that is a correlation or the consequences of it, we don't change. We don't grow. So this is what's happening globally. And that's why it's important to understand that all of the things that are happening to us, whether it's COVID or Donald Trump or the Capitol riot or Kyle Rittenhouse, all of these things are elucidating all of the cultural toxins in our culture. They have to come out. When we get sick, if we get the flu, if we get pneumonia, whatever it is, we have to clear our body or clear our systems of those toxins that are there before in order to heal. And that's what the healing process really is clearing all that stuff out. The sun and moon apply to a last quarter crisis in awareness, what Dane Rudger called a crisis in consciousness. I like the crisis in awareness a little bit better because it's a little easier to understand what that really means. To Neptune. What it means is that we know that we're supposed to do something, and it is a no compromise situation where we just have to do it. There's no longer any retreat that's possible, and I'll touch on this a little bit later. the sun and moon are separating from a gibbous conjunct to Eris. And again, this gibbous conjunct is also this Virgo kind of growth through crisis dynamic. And Jupiter, which is the dispositor of the sun and moon, the solar eclipse is in Sagittarius, squares the lunar nodes. It's not quite perfected yet. It will on January 3rd, which is going to be next month, but it's active, and it has been active for a while. And this again is something that really underscores this eclipse. Because this is a skip step, and I'll come back to this a little bit later in the talk. Mars in Scorpio applies to a crisis of awareness disseminating square to Jupiter as well. So again, this is, Mars is our actions. Jupiter makes everything bigger. Jupiter is our growth process. It's what expands everything. So again, this is and it's a disseminating square. Disseminating is just what it sounds like. It's distributing it in the environment. It's distributing it through our world, through our lives, through our personal lives, through our collective lives. It's these choices are, apparent as to what we need to do, and the message is out there. It's part of the zeitgeist. The lunar south node, which is ruled by Jupiter, applies to a new phase conjunction to Mars. Again, this brings in the idea of choices, and brings in the past is brought into the present, and it's a re-examination of the choices that we have made. And Mars also applies to a partile, again, an exact full phase inconjunct to Eris in Aries. So, these inconjuncts, and I'm going to speak to Mars and Eris a little later on when we look at the Mars transits. But again, these are very challenging aspects. And then we have Vesta actually separating from a disseminating sesqui-square to Eris as well. So Vesta is not only conjunct the south node, but it's also in a challenging aspect to Eris. So as the third and final sign of the fire triad, Sagittarius correlates to the archetype of self-realization. We have an ego, we have a personality, and in Sagittarius, that personality weaves itself into the collective. It's no longer just, bottled up in ourselves or maybe in our family or our private lives, where it's now out there in the public. It's now who we are as part of society. And the self begins to see itself as a single point in a much larger holographic universe. This is the real effect of Sagittarius. We realize that we are part of something that's much greater than ourselves. Personality is birthed in Aries, the first house. We're born, a total instinct. We just come into the world, eyes wide open. And it coalesces in Leo, where we actually begin to take, that self-image that we recognize in Cancer, and we begin to project it outward, in Leo as who we are as our personality. But in Sagittarius, as I said, that personality becomes part of the collective. It becomes, it's no longer just our own singular self. It's now a self that's linked to everything around us. Because this is Sagittarius, at this eclipse, the unexpected eccentricity of our world intensifies as individuality seeks authenticity. And this is what we're seeing around us. Just because somebody's individuating and is authenticating themselves, it doesn't mean that they're going to go up on the mountain and see God. They are unfolding according to their own blueprint. And that blueprint may be, a total different trajectory than our own, often very difficult for us to understand. We can feel increasingly alienated from the time space that we're passing through, like strangers in a strange land. That's very Sagittarian. Sagittarius is the stranger in a strange land. It no longer feels necessarily at home, where it is. There's a restlessness that emerges, a need to explore and discover what's around it. And our collective barriers appear even as personal boundaries dissolve. And this is very apparent. The vaxxers and the anti-vaxxers and the maskers and the no-maskers and the rioters and those people who are compliant because they go with the science. These are the kinds of issues that are swirling around here. around us, because our boundaries are definitely thinning out and becoming more porous. So we're seeing anger and restlessness rippling through the zeitgeist, through the collective stream of ideas and beliefs. And it's in our movies, it's in our TV programs, it's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, it's in everything around us, in the books that we read to some degree. And our personal truths rooted in the past are challenged now for authenticity and veracity. We're being required to really look at the past and how the past has influenced the present, and to find our authenticity and veracity. But again, that has a very personal spin to it. And the only constant seems to be chaos, and that's Eris. And you've heard me speak about Eris, and I will have much more to say about Eris before we're done here. So what does this mean? The intensity of the eclipse is powered up by Jupiter squaring the nodes, as I said. With Jupiter, the ruler of the lunar south node, squaring the nodes, it's really kicked up all this energy. This is what's known as a skipped step in evolutionary astrology, that something that is necessary for evolutionary progress has been denied, dismissed, or otherwise avoided. And there's no judgment here. It doesn't necessarily mean that we made a conscious choice to dismiss it. Maybe it was too hard. Maybe somebody else denied it. Maybe circumstances got in the way. But for whatever reason, that evolutionary issue, that karmic issue, come up for review, and it requires resolution. There's no longer any compromise that's possible. The resolution in a T-square is found in the open arm, and in this case, it's Virgo. It's work on the self, and it's growth through crisis. And this is clearly what we're going through. Whether we want to grow or not, the events that we are navigating through are changing us. And they're changing us for the better, even if we don't know it. When we come out the other end, we will look back at this time and we will say to some version of, thank God that happened, because look how far we've come. The crisis and awareness squares generate messages that point to finding the answers we are seeking within ourselves. Definitely have to look inside. We've had Pallas Athena and Neptune traveling together in the sky. And so we're getting messages. Our inner sense, our intuition is working overtime, but it can be overwhelming. There's no question. Skip steps create a choiceless awareness that closes the door to any further retreat from what must be accomplished. And the chaos and discord serves as the function of disrupting crystallized thinking and beliefs. And this is an Aquarius Capricorn dynamic. Capricorn is an earth sign. It structures things, it crystallizes things, it's aging, it's maturing. As we age, we kind of grow into a certain pattern. We grow into our bodies in a certain way. Our bodies, become shaped by our lifestyle. But Aquarius, Uranus comes along and shakes it all up, disrupts it, interrupts it, so that we can change, so that something else can again take its place. Two things can't exist in the same time and space at the same time. And this loss of normalcy forces us to create a new mental construct of the past, present, and the future. We have to look at the present. We have to look at what's happening now and understand it in terms of what the potentials it really holds, not the pain that it's dealing out to us, not the discomfort, not the lack of normalcy, not the shortages in the supermarket. None of that's important. We have to ask ourselves why these what's are happening. And as we examine the present, we also begin to re-image the past and understand that the challenges and trials and issues that we've had in the past have led to the present and have in one way or another changed us, made us better, hopefully made us grow. And this changes the future as well. I'll come back to this again on the next screen, I believe. So this eclipse occurs in the second decan of Sagittarius. And, as planets move through an archetype, move through a sign, they move degree by degree, and it's a progression. a planet that's in the early degrees of a sign is probably, learning very new to that particular lesson. A planet that is at the end of that sign is probably pretty much cleared through that understanding of that lesson and is beginning to move on to the next lesson, to the next set of dynamics. But in the middle degrees, the energies are freely flowing, they're fully activated, they're fully embedded in whatever that sign is. When we go from Aries to Taurus, in the beginning, we're all Aries, and we get to 28 or 29 degrees, we're almost Taurus, but we've still got a little bit of Aries left. But in the middle, that's pure color. If we were working with a palette of an artist's palette, it would be, red that is moving to orange or magenta. So we're in that process, and that middle decan is very liminal space because we're fully embedded in the sign. But we're beginning to sense, get impressions of the different element that is looming on the horizon. It's most difficult in the fixed signs. In Sagittarius, we're a little bit more adaptable, but in the fixed signs, the 15 degrees of the fixed signs can be very difficult because the resistance is tremendous. It's human nature to want routine, to expect routine, and to retreat when that routine is challenged or begins to fade away. We hold on to what's comfortable, to what's safe, even when we know that it maybe isn't working so well anymore. Even we know that we should change or have to change, we still don't want to. That's why these squares come along and just kick us in the butt and just move us along. It's the squares that get us off the couch. It's the trines that keep us, as couch potatoes to some degree. That's from Jeffrey Wolf Green. It's one of his favorite things to say. So, the lunar south node is who we have been, and it's partially who we still are. It holds our fruitions, the things we've accomplished in the past that become the strengths and the gifts that we carry into this lifetime. But it's also the things that we haven't yet finished with, that we've brought with us. It's where we go by default. I think Western astrology sometimes likes to suggest that we need to get out of our south node, that we have to become our north node. Well, we can't. The south node is who we've been for lifetimes. It's who we are by default, automatically. It's where we go whenever things get rough. We retreat back into that south node instinctually. We're not even aware that we do it. But that's kind of how it works. We come in with two suitcases. One is so heavy we don't even know we're carrying it. One is so heavy we're dragging it on the ground. Those are the lessons. And the other is so light we don't even know we have it. Those are our strengths and our gifts. And we have both. Excuse me. But because we hang on to what's familiar and safe, the past is too often repeated as the present. That's what happens. We just keep repeating the past into the present. And guess what? The present becomes the future again. So since the future originates in the present, it just repeats, perhaps time and time and time again. We create abstract mental holograms of reality that continue to reactivate themselves, and they increasingly create dense thought forms of themselves. We keep, the universe is mental. That's the first law of the Hermetic principle. What we think really determines what happens to us. It's what we're projecting, what we expect to see. Our eyes don't receive images, they project those images. So these mental holograms of reality just reactivate over and over again. But what happens as they keep reactivating is they intensify and they radicalize and they become so embedded in themselves. And this is what we are seeing in the world around us that is so difficult for some of us to understand how we could become so radicalized. But it's, in our country, it's been going on for 400 years. It's not something that just happened. It's kind of like a rain cloud. It's, a little bit of science here. A cloud fills up with moisture. And when that cloud becomes totally saturated with moisture, a total transformation occurs and it turns into rain and it precipitates out. And this is the space we're passing through. We are becoming saturated. We learn by direct emotional experience, and until we become saturated with that emotional experience, we don't change. But when we do reach that saturation point, and we're headed there, it precipitates out and it changes into another form entirely. And we will see it happen. It's just not going to happen in January. So what can we expect personally, from this? Fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are going to feel the earth shifting beneath their feet. The solidity of what they were taking what we take for granted, or they take for granted, is dissipating. It's moving. It's hard to stand on ground that is shifting. The air signs, Geminis, Libra, Aquarius, are going to feel a little befuddled. There's going to be a little mental confusion, and as they begin to question what they know and what they believe and what's true and what is reality. The water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, are going to sense emotional currents running much stronger and much faster, and maybe very difficult to navigate. They're going to feel like they're in the middle of a wild river, and they're searching for something to grab onto, perhaps to find some kind of a balance and stability. And earth signs are going to feel like they're drying out from the heat, but they're also at the same time going to feel more porous. And I just want to point out this beautiful illustration. This is a local Santa Fe artist, and this just came up in the local paper a couple of days ago. She's created this whole line of tarot cards. I encourage you to go visit her website and look at these. Some amazing images to meditate and think about. So how do we navigate the time we're passing through? Many of us have practices and understand, how to get grounded, and that's what we really need to do. We need to get back into our bodies. We need to anchor ourselves to our sacred commitment to ourselves, to who we are, to who we want to become, to what we believe, and to what we know to be true. And to listen to that still small voice in our head. We have to listen to what they're saying. But yes, what is our intuition telling us? And what is our heart telling us? This is who we have to trust. And we also have to tell ourselves that this too shall pass. So I've got some animations again this month, and I'm going to kind of walk through these because it shows us what these transits are actually doing. So we're going to start with these inner planets. And we can see that Mercury clearly covers a lot of ground in a month. But it's going to aspect Neptune and Eris. It's going to change signs, ingress into Capricorn. It's going to aspect Uranus and Eris again, and Venus and Pluto. And some of these are quite challenging dynamics. And even the trines, certainly a trine to Eris and trines to Uranus can be very difficult. They're not necessarily easy. But let me play this for you. So you see on the 7th, we have Mercury squaring Neptune. And then on the 9th, Mercury is trining Eris, perfecting to a trine to Eris. And Mercury, I can't get it to do 0 because I'm doing full day animations here. But you can see that on the 13th, and here this is the chart for the 14th. But on the 13th, Mercury is going to ingress into Capricorn, still aspecting Eris, still aspecting Uranus. Now we jump ahead to the 20th. And we see a perfection, a trine from Mercury to Uranus. And this can be difficult. This can be a mental overload. This can be not able to sleep. This can be inundated with, right brain, thoughts, things coming out of left field, in machine gun fashion that are hard to deal with. It's just because it's a trine doesn't make it, good or easy. It just means that these two planets are working together, with a very fluid a relationship where things are working together very well, but it can still be a great challenge. And then we get to the 28th. we get to the 28th, we've got Mercury squaring Eris again. So this is the perfection. And Mercury and Eris, again, what we have to watch our words. Words can be wounding. Words can create chaos. Again, they come back to this idea that the universe is mental. Mercury is our mentation, it's our cognition. And when Eris plays a role, especially in a last quarter square, where there's an awareness of something that has to happen, but yet we haven't done it, there can be a lot of pressures. There can be a lot of challenges. It can be very, very challenging. And if we finish up, we with this stellium of Venus, Mercury, and Pluto all together, especially with Mercury conjunct Pluto. Again, a very difficult. There can be power struggles, arguments, all kinds of things can happen where if we either feel totally self-empowered or perhaps totally disempowered. It's problematic. So as I said, all the Mercury transits are challenging, even the trines. There are no easy combinations between Mercury, Eris, and Uranus. Neptune can bring delusion and confusion. Venus can tend to soften Mercury's tone and seek balance, but Venus is going to move into Capricorn later in this cycle. And actually, it is in Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn, and Mercury in Capricorn, the agenda. Capricorn can be repressive, it can be depressive, it can be suppressive. Again, just because it's a conjunction doesn't mean that everything's going to flow smoothly. And Mercury and Pluto especially are difficult as forces apply to any ongoing agenda. It could be subterfuge, purposeful redirection. If you read the mythology of Mercury, he was quite devious, and he could very glib, pure eternus. He was the eternal child, never grew up. Peter Pan complex. All these things can emerge. Excuse me. So this is an interesting transit of Venus, and let me run this one for you. You can see that what's happening here is that Venus is the retrograde. Venus's retrograde is bracketed by squares to Eris and conjunctions to Pluto. So is this running or not? I'm not sure this is running. I guess it is. Yeah, it is. So it's going to be a 1-2 punch here as Venus moves into its retrograde condition and then begins to move backwards. So it's going to repeat both of these aspects over the course of this month. And these are really the basic two aspects that Venus is going to make. Both of them are challenging. And again, Venus in Capricorn might either exert repressive authority or retreat into depression. And relationships can get chaotic, they can get discordant, they can really, kind of go out of control. So, we got to kind of watch it with our partners, with our friends, with our colleagues. Everybody's, on edge, everybody's a little bit, crazy, everybody maybe is fearful, maybe depressed, maybe just, totally, unable to really cope or, get grounded. So we have to get grounded within ourselves so that we can kind of navigate this and not get sucked into the chaos and discord that may be circling around us. And this dynamic is going to earmark the entire retrograde cycle. Venus will station direct again on January 29th and finally exit its shadow on the 1st of March. And unfortunately, Mars also presents some challenges as this year goes by. I think these Mars aspects are the most difficult of all. We see that actually it begins on go back here, on the 4th. It begins with an exact inconjunct to Eris, and Mars and Eris together. I mean, it's the word that I think I used here is incendiary. Very, very, very powerful combination. Mars is, Aries and Mars together is a lot of fire. And Eris, takes no prisoners, and Mars is impulsive. We can see some, dramatic events occurring here. And then on the 8th, we've got Mars squaring Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to bring his largesse, which may not be very, generous, but he will be generous, but it doesn't mean it's going to be beneficial. It brings all this to Mars as well, and just enlarges all of this impulsiveness and restlessness, especially as Mars moves into Sagittarius on the 13th. Mars could become especially unruly and erratic, and erratic is also an Eris word. And then on the 15th, we have Mars conjunct the North Node. So as Mars, Mars lands on the nodes again. This is going to bring past and future back, right into the present. And it could easily stimulate some new choices, going forward, if it's used proactively. But reactively, it could also activate the South Node, it's conjunct the South Node. It could activate the North Node and stimulate some new choices and new direction forward. But it also could dredge up the past and bring it back in, and we could be revisited with a lot of the choices that we made in the past. And then as the month closes, and I'm going to have more to say about this Christmas week stuff that's going on, because there's a lot going on. It's the last week in December. It's really kind of piled on. We see that Mars sesqui-squares Eris after the inconjunct, two difficult quote unquote minor aspects. I don't consider either one of them to be a minor aspect. And then Mars inconjuncts Uranus on the 28th. So these challenges are gonna come up as the year ends. Mars and Eris are unstable in any combination, and in Scorpio and Aries they are incendiary. Jupiter expands the planetary mix, and in Sagittarius, Mars needs freedom and independence and can become restless and erratic and impulsive. And Mars in the South Node will activate greater awareness of our past and our pending choices, from the past, and what we need to do going future. And Mars and Uranus will be disruptive at best, cataclysmic at worst. So we've got Jupiter ingressing Pisces, and on the 28th, and this presages the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that's going to occur on April 12th of next year. We're going to have it's the only outer planet aspect that occurs in 2022, and this ingress into Pisces. Jupiter was here briefly, and Jupiter's about to return to permanently into Pisces on the 28th. Neptune correlates to pandemics in general and diseases of an unknown origin in medical astrology. So does this suggest that we're going to experience more waves of COVID? It's already starting to happen. Vaccine enforcement will be on the forefront of the news. In other countries, they're already cracking down on people who are not vaccinated. We're going to see more of this. I don't know that we're necessarily going to see lockdowns or the way that we did last year, but I think that we're going to definitely see the Saturn-Uranus thing really kick in, and the word enforcement, I think, is going to be in the news. And we're going to see, as a result, we're going to see increased alienation. There's no question that people are going to become more alienated from what's going on. And personal boundaries are going to become more fluid. People are going to act out. People are going to do things that they might never have done or thought about doing before, but they're just going to act instinctively and responsibly, just like the guy who got in his car and mowed down 40 people in that parade. We're going to see this kind of stuff. We're going to see, people like Kyle Rittenhouse, getting a gun and just, marching through the streets and looking for somebody to shoot. It's scary and it's difficult to understand, but it's real. It's reality. As the new year begins, and we'll see this again January 3rd, jumping ahead, Jupiter is going to make its what I call its final declaration as it squares the nodes. It's been the ruler of the lunar south node for the last 18 months. And again, this is a skip step, generates non-compromised resolution of the evolutionary issue. And in this case, it references the need to resolve our understanding of what is true and what is false. And this has really been streaming through the zeitgeist since Jupiter was in Scorpio a few years back, when we had Weinstein and Me Too, and then Epstein, and all of this is coming out, and certainly Donald Trump. So this is an ongoing, collective discussion and understanding. But clearly, as Jupiter squares the nodes, I think that it's going to intensify and become more focused. So, does what we're thinking come from our intuition? Because Jupiter is intuition. Jupiter was the traditional ruler of Pisces before Neptune was discovered in 1890. So it also relates to the 12th house and to intuitions, but it's also our imagination. So how do we know that what we're thinking is intuition? Is it something that's real? Is it something that we're sensing that's coming to us out of left field, out of our right brain, out of our higher mind? Or is it just our imagination? Is it coming from fear? Or is it coming from, just our own thought forms that we keep regenerating ourselves? And certainly confrontations are going to continue to swirl around the vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, the mask and no masks. And my sense of this is that the COVID numbers are going to continue to escalate. So on December 24th, we're going to see the third and final Saturn-Uranus square. And this time it's with Uranus in its retrograde condition. And, this is an interesting combination because Saturn is the sign that is in the sign that Uranus rules, and Saturn used to be the ruler of Aquarius. So there's a certain compatibility here, but they're in a square formation. And this has generated this individual versus the collective kind of standoff and face-off that we've been facing. And Saturn is repression, it's suppression. Aquarius is the individual. So this could very easily be the repression of individual expression, the enforcement that I spoke to. But it's also deconstructing our consensus reality. And I think that this is something huge, and this is something good. It is taking us out of this quote normalcy of what we think is normal and beginning to open the space where we can understand that maybe there's a different kind of normality that we can have. But all of the toxins have to be released. They all have to come out. We have to have this healing crisis in order for all this to happen. Interruptions and disruptions to normalcy. We're seeing that it's been going on. And it instills and structures potentials for evolutionary growth. We've got the lunar north node separating from the last quarter square to Saturn. So Saturn is in essence is restructuring, is having this crisis of awareness, crisis of consciousness with our potential future, and to restructure it, to reimagine it, to revisit it, to re-image it. But we can, in the meantime, we still have to expect resentments and anger and emotional displays, self-exile and acts of retribution in the world. And this is Black Moon Lilith in a gibbous inconjunct, again, a Virgo dynamic inconjunct to Saturn in Aquarius. And I'll have a little bit more to say with Black Moon Lilith because she's quite active with Hygeia. It's the last slide that I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And I encourage you all actually to tune in for Gemini Brett later on today, because I'm going to guess that he's going to have quite a comprehensive discourse on Black Moon Lilith. So Chiron has been retrograde. It's going to station direct on December 19th. The retrograde cycle has awakened our commitment to our authenticity. The authenticity emerges as response to old wounds. We've got Mars applying to a trine to Chiron, and the lunar south node separating from a trine to Chiron, and Vesta separating from a trine to Chiron. So These three Sagittarius planets are all aspecting Chiron, again, opening up this discussion within ourselves and in the world around us about truth and falsehood and authenticity. We've got Vesta, conjunct the Sun and Vesta conjunct in Sagittarius, Vesta in Sagittarius. So it's all about authenticity, veracity. These are the issues that are swirling. And we've got a cardinal T-square because Chiron is squaring Mercury, squaring the moon, and the moon is opposite Mercury. So, the moon is all about our safety and our security. So we're seeking emotional security. We're seeking emotional shelter. It's generating the recognition of that the words and the narratives can wound or heal. And these aren't just the words and narratives that we say to others, or the wounding that we do to others. We also do it to ourselves. The self-narratives that we have can also wound us and keep us in this, emotionally unwell condition, not feeling safe, not feeling secure, not feeling good about ourselves, not feeling good about the world around us, and unable to heal. We've got to change those narratives, and we've got to really look at the words that we use when we describe ourselves and the world around us. And this is all as the result of recent experiences. We're going to begin to make choices, or are making choices, that maximize our security and maximize our safety again. So this is Hygeia, and it's basically the last slide I've got. And these are all the aspects to Hygeia. And I just want to run this animation because it's quite telling. You can see that Black Moon Lilith, first of all, we've got the T-square with Eris, Hygeia, and Pluto, which in and of itself is a powerful combination. But as Black Moon Lilith moves back and forth, it creates this Thor's hammer. And a Thor's hammer is the best way to describe it. It's like a yod on steroids. It's a really, really intense, it's not a trine by any, and it's a trine because they're all kind of working together, but it's two sesquisquares and a square. Very, very difficult combination. And as you see, it's going to form. And then as Black Moon Lilith goes forward and comes back again, it becomes a grand trine. And in both cases, it's really blending the energies of Lilith, which can be very difficult, very challenging, very resentful, very much wanting to just exile itself and punish and retribution. All these things are coming to play as Jupiter squares Hygeia and Pluto squares Eris and Hygeia. So I see Hygeia as one of the indications of COVID very clearly. She's about proactive healthcare, and if Neptune is pandemics in general, but Hygeia really refers to how we have taken care of ourselves. And I think what it comes down to is that the people who are most vulnerable are those who have really not paid much attention to their own health, through the years, maybe never. We here in the United States, we live in what I would characterize as a fix me kind of society. We think we can, eat whatever we want, and then, go to the doctor and he'll give us a cholesterol pill, or if we don't exercise and our joints begin to wear out, we go in, we just get a joint replacement. Well, we're not parts. That's Newtonian physics. We're Einsteinian physics. We are holistic beings. We're not made up of separate parts. We are a singularity, and you can't just replace a part of us and expect that to heal us. All that does is get rid of the part that's broken, but it does nothing about healing. So it's a whole different perspective, and that's what Hygeia is about. And I think that, again, this is one of the major themes of the time that we're passing through, is to recognize that we need to take responsibility for ourselves. Nobody's coming to save us. The Hopis told us that in 2001, if anybody read the message from Orabai. This is what's happening. And this, I think this is a core lesson of the time we're passing through. And it's never too late. The body can heal itself at any age. We could be 70, we could be 80 years old, but if we dedicate ourselves to eating well, to exercising, to, thinking good thoughts, to be finding some emotional center that is healthy. Listen to Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton tells us that, that we can actually talk to the cells of our body and heal them, that they are responsive to our thoughts, they are responsive to our emotions. And when what it is, what we think about ourselves and feel about ourselves and believe about ourselves, that becomes the formative dynamic that we're in, and it's really what makes it all happen. We can see here, this T-square with Hygeia, Pluto, and Jupiter and Eris. And then we have the Thor's hammer with Black Moon Lilith, Hygeia, and Pluto. And then an air grand trine again with Black Moon Lilith and Jupiter and Hygeia. These are powerful combinations, but they're all saying that going forward, that our becoming and our growth and the growth factor itself is all dependent on the self-care that we bring to it. And we're going to continue to see this chaos and discord dislodge our normalcy until individually and collectively we begin to get it. This is a printout from SolarFire of the last week of the month. And I just want to, kind of run this past you, and you can kind of study it and see, what's going on here between the 24th and the 28th, just in those 4 days, actually the 30th, I guess, those 6 days at the end of the month of these, these squares to, and in conjuncts to Uranus, conjunctions to Pluto, and then all of these Black Moon Lilith and Eris conjunctions. It's very, very powerful. And they're all coming together in the same few days. It's going to be very intense. And in the chart, the Revolutionary War chart for the United States, the third and final Pluto return is on December 25th, Christmas Day. So, fasten your seatbelts, guys. Just a brief look ahead. I want to talk about 2022 just a little bit, just to kind of broach it. I will have a lot more to say about this next year, but just to understand again, the moment we're passing through and what's on the horizon. The lunar nodes are going to have a very significant influence next year. Jupiter is going to square the nodes on January 3rd. I referenced that as the ruler of the lunar south node. The lunar nodes are going to ingress Taurus and Scorpio on January 18th. Kind of think back in your own life, what happened 18 years ago, what was going on 18 years ago in your life when this last happened. Venus and Pluto are going to become the rulers of the north nodes. So our priorities, our values, our self-empowerment, all going to become very transformational over the next 18 months. Jupiter is going to conjoin Neptune. Talked about that a little bit. It's a major outer planet aspect that's going to set up a 12 to 15 year cycle. And then that conjunction is going to trine and sextile the lunar nodes as well from April and May. The conjunction occurs in April. Through April and May, it's going to be in a conjunction, in a trine and sextile to the lunar nodes. But through that same time frame, we're going to have a skip step condition as Saturn also squares the lunar nodes. Uranus is going to join the lunar north node from June to September, perfecting in the summer and July. And then Hygeia is going to join the lunar south node, opposing Uranus in August. So, our collective and personal priorities and our values and our shadows will be exposed. And Uranus is going to continue to deconstruct our normalcy, and it's going to escalate our commitment to what is truly essential. That's what Uranus in Taurus is doing. It's showing us what's essential and eliminating what's not essential. Essential was a key word as COVID began. Essential industries, essential businesses, essential products, whatever. And we're going to have lessons about personal responsibility, about the importance of community, and about the importance of proactive healthcare and how we have compromised our own proactive healthcare processes. I want to end with Krishnamurti. He said, the crisis is not in the world. It's not nuclear war. It's not the terrible divisions and the brutality that's going on. The crisis is in our consciousness. The crisis is what we are and what we have become. This is how you can stay in touch with me. I do astrology readings, EA readings that tell you why. You already know the what's. EA can tell you why. This is how you can be in touch with me. And this is all the different reports and forecasts that I do over the course of the month. I thank you all so much for your attention, allowing me to rant and speak my mind here. God bless. Namaste. Be well, be kind, be truthful. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.